Hey, this is the second devlog for my still unnamed roguelike deck-building twin-stick shooter, which is still living under the name CardCrawler. This month, I started out fixing a few bugs that really bothered me while I was capturing footage for the last devlog, most notably this fun one where enemies who touch you sometimes become stuck to you, meaning if you don't kill them within a few seconds, you're just dead. I feel kinda dumb here. I spent a long time scraping through the code, trying to figure out what in the enemy movement code was causing it, before I finally did some Google searching and realized I had a setting wrong in the game engine. Yeah, that was a lesson in humility, and being willing to look for help immediately if I get stuck, rather than being prideful and flailing for hours first. I did have a weird day or two in this last week where I was more in the mood to practice art than write code, so I made a few passes over the game, tweaking and adjusting things. You won't see all of it here, but most notably you'll notice that the neon blue tile map has been subdued somewhat. Hopefully it's better, just remember that once again, nothing here is final. I've added a few new cards, which have fit so far nicely into the energy system from last month. I've also implemented a rarity system where each card is designated as common, uncommon, or rare. This makes it easy for me to balance the shop and the card rewards, with common cards much more likely to appear, and with a higher chance at rarer cards after defeating higher tier enemies. I also now have a status effect system, although there's only one or two cards that use it right now, including a shield card that blocks all damage for a short period of time, and a haste card that briefly increases your base hand size, meaning that reloading gives you more cards to play with. I definitely have more ideas, both for status effects and for cards and enemies to use them, but my focus right now is on getting a vertical slice of the game working, so I can really get a feel for how the completed game will feel. In my playtesting, standing in a single room and fighting off wave after wave after wave felt pretty stale and repetitive. It also made progression feel less significant, since the only real progression to be had was improving your deck. So I decided to split the game up into multiple different rooms for the player to move through. These rooms are laid out on a map, giving the player a strong sense of progression as they move across the map, discovering new things and making some real choices about their progression. My initial plan to start with was to do a branching tree sort of layout, much like Slay the Spire or Inscription. So I started to work on that, which was fun. Eventually I got everything working, but after a bit of testing and exploring, I realized that it wasn't really the feel I wanted for two main reasons. First, this doesn't look like a dungeon, it looks like a tree. It works fine for Inscription since you're walking through a forest or whatever, and in Slay the Spire it's kind of representative of the tower that you're climbing, kind of an abstract sort of thing. I'm not complaining at all about how it's done in those games, I just decided I wanted to do it differently for my game. My game takes place in a dungeon, not a tree, so I want to kind of evoke that feel a bit better. Second, I want to allow space for players to take their own paths, and to decide how thoroughly they want to loot versus moving quickly to the objective. Think about a Zelda game, or Enter the Gungeon, where there are sometimes rooms off to the side with optional chests or rewards. You don't need to go there, but by taking the time to move more carefully, check every door, you can earn some pretty cool rewards that you might otherwise have missed. Similarly, in FTL Faster Than Light, as you move through a sector, there is some strategy in visiting as many beacons as possible. There is some time pressure as the enemy fleet pursues you, but the more beacons you visit, the more opportunities you have to earn scrap and rewards. I haven't yet decided if I want this kind of time pressure in this game, or exactly what that would look like, but I do want players to be able to take their own path through the dungeon, and to decide how thoroughly they want to loot and clear the area. So instead, I had the idea for a grid-based maze, with each point on the grid being a room that needs to be cleared or visited before you can progress. So let's make a maze. There are many techniques for maze generation. I used something called Prim's algorithm. Simply put, you start with a grid of isolated cells. Pick one cell at random to be your start, place it in a list. Now, as long as that list is not empty, repeat the following steps. Pick a random cell from the list. If that cell has not yet been visited, open it, and if it has a direction stored with it, open that direction as well. Look at the 4 adjacent cells. If they've not been visited yet, add them to the list, along with the direction that you're coming from. Once your list is empty, you know you have visited every cell and your maze is complete. If you like, you can knock out some additional walls at random just to add in some loops and alternate paths. Once the layout of the maze is finished, I loop over every room, calculating the shortest distance from that room to the start, and how many connections that room has to other rooms. Then, with that information in hand, I can do 3 things. Rooms which have only one connecting hallway, i.e. dead ends, have a random chance of becoming either a shop or a treasure room. This encourages you to explore to the end of every hallway, just to see if there's any goodies there. The dead end, which is furthest from the start room, becomes the boss room. This isn't ideal, since it means that even when the room labels are hidden, you can count and get a pretty good idea of where the boss is, but it's good enough for now. Finally, any other rooms are either made standard enemy rooms or elite rooms. Elite rooms are tougher or have more enemies, but have a higher chance at earning an uncommon or a rare card as a reward. The chance that the room is an elite room scales up the further a room is from the start, with the starting room never being elite, and the room next to the boss having something like a 25% chance. This offers a nice difficulty curve throughout a run, or at least gives me another knob to mess with to make that curve potentially nicer. The one thing this process is missing is to break things up so that the maze doesn't always generate in a square shape, and potentially to hide hallways until you get closer so you can't immediately plan a route through, but I think it's a huge step forward from what I had. Speaking of boss rooms, I did put in some serious time on the first boss. It's probably about 60% done, but I'm going to keep that under my hat till next time. Just know, it's coming. Once it's in, I think my vertical slice is complete. I'll pass it around to some friends and family for some preliminary playtesting. Then if that goes well, I can really start to focus on adding more variety, more cards, more enemies, sound effects, music, menus, better art, just generally fleshing out the game to look and feel nice, and to have some real variety from playthrough to playthrough. What do you think so far? Do you have an idea for a name for the game? If so, leave a comment. I did have one cool idea, but it turns out it was taken by another game like 8 years ago, so yeah. I guess I just need to change it somehow into something a bit more unique, or just come up with something different. Oh well, plenty of time for that. It'll be nice to settle on something so I can start to refer to it by a single name, instead of the 6 or 7 different names I've messed with over the course of development. Thanks for watching.